Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the podcast today, we have Rachel Tapscott. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
It is my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So I run a video production house called That Camera Girl. It was kind of a nickname turned business name. So I help people with video production services of all kinds, and also now moving into our post-COVID world, helping people put video into their businesses themselves, since we can't always be in physical contact with people. So in a nutshell, that is what I spend my time doing.
So it's an interesting, if you've ever, for someone who's doing it for the first time, like being on camera for business, for example, it's an interesting thing that happens because you go from being a normal human being to someone who can't form a sentence, and it gets progressively worse from there. So why is it the case that you can have a normal conversation like we are now, and then as soon as a video camera is introduced, something happens? It's like rabbit in the headlights type stuff.
Oh, yeah.
What happens there?
Definitely. I'll use an example from the first time that I actually sat in front of the camera myself. And this is coming from a background of helping people all day, every day, speak well on camera, and never really understanding, my my point of view being behind the camera, in front of the camera. And my friend sits me down to record this video that I've done a blog post about. Ironically, it was about being confident on camera. And I go, oh yeah, I know all the information, it's there. And she hits record. And like you said, deer in the headlights, suddenly all the nerves come and you have all these thoughts, what if what I'm saying doesn't make sense? What if I come across in the wrong way? What if my friends and family make fun of me for being on video? And it's just this automatic judgment that is suddenly triggered as soon as you hit record. And the idea, I guess, of putting yourself out into the world where anyone can watch it, and the idea of being judged about it. And it's really just, for me, it's just a lack of experience in doing it. And a lot of people, once you do it for the first time, it's really not that bad once you kind of get over that first initial experience of it. But what I say to people, because we're all afraid of the different judgment that we possibly could get. But when you do put yourself out there, most of the time, those people that you're worried about judging you are going to be there supporting you, because everyone is afraid of being on camera themselves. So biggest advice is just to do the first one, rip the Band-Aid off, and you'll actually feel better about it after you've done it.
Sounds like from your description, it's kind of like where your thoughts go. If you were acting as you normally would, those things wouldn't happen. But as soon as you start thinking about all the potential negative consequences, that's when things start to go wrong.
Yeah, it's a lot like public speaking as well. But at least with a video, you can normally edit it. So if you do have any stumbles, then you can always go back and cut them out.
I don't know about you, but I've relied quite heavily on speaking to camera and using the edit to kind of tidy up those types of mistakes.
Yeah, definitely. And that first video that I made, I think I filmed for about 45 minutes to get 5 minutes of usable content, and been able to really refine that after doing it again and again. But yeah, it's something some people, I guess, are born with it. But for the majority of us, it's just about practice and just doing it again and again and getting over that fear.
Yeah, repetition is a good way to learn. But the analogy for me is a lot like there's a lesson there, which is as soon as you focus on the thing which you don't want to happen, that's when it happens. Have you ever thought about that?
Oh, yeah, that is so true. It all depends on where our thoughts go. So, yeah, focusing, I guess, more on the positive outcomes and the reason why you're doing it in the first place is what I normally, especially then when I was feeling nervous, you go to that. Why am I putting this video out? Like, what are the positive things that are going to come from it, and shift away from those negative things, like you said.
Mm. Well, you mentioned before the call you've been on lots of podcasts today. How has that been for you?
Yeah, it was a good day. So I run another podcast myself. So most of those are interviewing other people. And I run video as my business, but my podcast is all about mindset and positive psychology. So, yeah, lots of talking about today gut health, and had a few different coaches and lots of broad topics all to do around mindset and, getting rid of those limiting beliefs. And I think that ties a lot into what I do with people around the camera as well, and getting rid of those negative thoughts and limiting beliefs around that. So
How many podcasts did you do?
I had 3, and then you will be number 4.
4 in a day is pretty hard working. So well done on that one. Do you enjoy it?
I love it. Yeah. I guess it's one of those things that started as a side project when COVID started, but now, yeah, I love it. So it's definitely part of my business model now, and just trying to grow that and see where it goes.
And that kind of helps with what we talked about. So it's practice, right? So if you did want to get better on camera, that's one way to do it, is by doing podcasts with people, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I think another big thing about the idea of being on camera is just getting used to the sound of our own voice and what we look like on camera. Because when you watch yourself back for the first time, you're probably not gonna love it, because we're not used to seeing the way we look. We're not used to hearing the way we sound, because we definitely sound different in our head to when we sound on camera. And a big thing with the repetition is just doing it again and again and getting used to what that feels like and sounds like, and even seeing maybe what you don't really like or are not comfortable with. And you can get feedback then by watching yourself and changing your performance. And same thing, doing it again and again and again. It's like a muscle. You're only going to get better. The more videos you make, the more podcasts that you do, you're only going to improve every time.
Well, I have a question about the Post-it notes. Have you gotten through a podcast episode and someone just hasn't referenced them at all?
Yes, the one I just did didn't mention the Post-it notes at all. But yeah, it's funny. I've got my podcast planning wall on one side, and I've got all of my motivational notes and some to-do lists on the other side. But yeah, it normally is brought up as a topic of conversation.
Is there any reason why it's physical rather than digital?
It's funny, as much as I love to work in the digital space and work with video, I still love old-fashioned writing things down. If I'm doing any kind of planning, I will physically write it on paper or on sticky notes, and you can physically move that around, take it off when the task is done. I think it has a different feel to it. I think when everything is always digital, that gets in the way of creativity a little bit. And it's different for every person. But when it's just writing things physically on paper, I feel like there's more space to be creative and let thoughts and ideas flow. Whereas you're sitting at a laptop, writing some notes, even for a video that I might be creating, and the cursor is blinking at you. I feel like that gets in the way of creativity for me. And I'm a very visual person. So the sticky notes are just that way. And especially the bright pinks and blues, it's a way to help me process things for my visual mind.
Okay, well, that's a good answer. You are kind of confined by what the computer allows you to do, for sure. But there's a particular quote within one of your profiles which I wanted to ask you about, which was, "Suddenly my Hollywood blockbuster dream wasn't all that interesting anymore."
Yep.
Would you like to expand on that for us?
Oh, yeah. So when I went to film school, as I think pretty much everyone who goes to film school comes out wanting to be a director, I went to be a director of photography and work on all the big budget blockbuster films. And I think that was a really attractive goal, and it seemed really glamorous. And I do like, as a camera operator, I love creating really it's beautiful cinematic things. But I suppose when I had gone through a few different job roles at this time, I found that the work with people was much more fulfilling than just creating the shots. And especially, interning on a few different films or miniseries and stuff like that, I think the glamorous side of things. It's not always all that it's cracked up to be when you're out getting sunburnt and, really long days. And when I'd work with people doing corporate videos even, and they're telling their story and it's really personal, and creating videos for these people and them going, wow, like that's me, that's my brand, that's my story. How awesome is that? How great of an experience is that they got to share that with me? That was such a fulfilling thing that I guess the idea of doing the Hollywood movies, it didn't really kind of fill that part of me anymore. Whereas working with people one-on-one, I think that's where my business is kind of came from. And that's what I really love to do and help people with, is get their story out there.
So have you spoken with anyone else on a podcast who also went to film school?
I have not. No.
You have now.
Ah, excellent.
So yeah, I went to Brighton Film School.
Did you want to be a director when you come out of film school?
I didn't even get to the end of film school before I realized I didn't want to be a director.
Yeah.
So I think that might be an issue of preparation. You kind of go into, and again, this can be applied to other things, I think, where you have this glamorized view of what a particular profession is. And then when you actually go and find out, it's very different than what you might imagine it would be.
Absolutely.
But, I went straight to being an editor rather than a director.
Oh, that's great.
I just enjoyed it. There wasn't, there's a phrase which says, follow your effort. And I kind of like that, because, we're not always that conscious or clear on what it is that we do and don't like. But when we apply effort to something, it's kind of a clue on how you might want to spend your time.
Yeah, that's really true. Yeah.
So do you feel like you have followed your effort on the corporate video side of things? And correct me if I'm wrong, I've interpreted that as corporate videos. Is that what you do?
Yeah, a lot of it's what I do. It was more the promotional side of things, which is awesome, until, again, COVID come along, and physically not being able to access clients kind of changed things around a bit. And the big move now is more into course creation and helping people put their work online when they can't physically access their clients either. So that like informational media where it's going, I find that's really fulfilling. So I think I've definitely found my direction, and loving the way that things are going. So yes, to answer your question, yes.
So how long do you think it will be before you'll be back to doing back to normal, quote unquote, whatever normal will be?
Yeah, look, we're pretty lucky here in Australia, really, and especially where I'm in Brisbane, we haven't had too much lockdown. So I've been able to go out and film and be with my clients, but there's still, it's a very fluid situation. So it's probably as back to normal as I think it will get for a while, but it's a workable kind of normal where a lot of the work that I do is in the edit suite. So can be at home, can be anywhere, really, just take my computer and go, but have been able to actually be in person with clients here, which is great. But I think the work and the direction that the work is going is probably going to stay the same, with everyone putting their businesses online more, where it used to maybe be kind of more of a luxury to have that online course element. And now it's moved to more of a necessity. And so many people are moving towards that. So, and it is a great space to be in. I think learning online digital media is going to be such a big industry, really forever now, just moving forward. So
how much of your business do you think will permanently be changed?
I think pretty much, look, the way it's going now is what I found I enjoy doing too. So, pretty much is going to stay the same for me, I believe, unless something else comes along, different opportunities come along. It's a pretty fluid thing as well. I still work in a pretty broad space, but I think it's pretty much permanently changed to the direction it's going now.
So what does your business look like now?
So mostly helping people build their online courses, whether that's, a yoga instructor who can't be in person. We film the entire course and create modules and people can follow along with that. I work with nutritionists, people in the fitness industry who can't run classes, coaches of all kinds, really. And just adding an element to their business as extra from information that they already have or to take over completely. And some of it is even so they can step back from the teaching space in person and spend more time with their family and that kind of thing. But that's really it's really taken over. So most of my work, bit of filming for the course, lots of editing. So that's pretty much week to week what it looks like now.
So you're doing a lot of editing as well then?
Yeah, lots of time in this room with the sticky notes in the edit suite.
Do you enjoy that?
Yeah, I do. I definitely enjoy getting out of the office as well. So I get to do some camera operating freelance work time to time to get me out of the office and be around with people. But I do love the edit and bringing it all together, and as well doing the podcast and stuff like this.
Is there any social aspect in terms of what you coach people to do?
What do you mean by that?
Social media.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, definitely a big part of it, because especially with the promotional side, you can make a killer video, but if you don't know how to market that or to use it properly on social media, it's probably not going to do any well. So a lot of what I do as part of my business working with clients is some bit of social media training so that they can use the product that I've made for them in a way that's actually going to be effective. Because at the end of the day, if no one's going to see it, then what's the point in creating it? So just training around Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, stuff like that. And normally, if it is around promotion, we'll do a series of Facebook or social media videos, website videos, landing page videos, whatever it might be. So it creates a kind of system in itself. So it's not just a standalone video people see once. It's like kind of a chain effect, and targeting, doing things in different ways to try and target different audiences, looking at who the target audience is going to be, who that person's ideal client is going to be. And that also comes back to the way that they talk on video. And we work on that with the presentation and in a total circle, going back to the fear of the camera thing we talked about at the start of the episode. So a lot of it does feed itself in a circle, from promotion for the online media and the presentation on camera. It all kind of just goes around and feeds into itself. Good.
Well, we touched briefly on film school. At what point did you know that you wanted to go and have a career in video, if we're going to generally make it like that? Has it always been something you wanted to do?
Yeah, well, I found my interest in media kind of by accident at the beginning. When I was in high school, I picked a film and TV course as a blood subject because I couldn't pick another subject because it didn't fit in with my timetable. So I thought, that's fine. All my friends are doing media. Let's do media. And then the minute that I picked up a camera, I just fell in love with it. And I never really thought of that as a career path at all. It just wasn't something that was even on my radar. And after I just loved that in high school, not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life at that point. You're 17 and you're told you got to choose what you want to do with the rest of your life. Just looking at university courses, there was a film, television, radio course at a uni that wasn't too far from me. So I kind of fell into it, but I knew pretty much straight away that it was something I wanted to do long term, and especially the camera operating part of it. When got to use proper cameras when I got to uni, I just knew I never wanted to put the camera down. So that was always what I pushed for. And my first few jobs were always camera operator jobs. I worked in local news as a camera operator, editor, and I just loved every part of the filming, and then progressing into the corporate video, just love the filming. So it was an accident, but I knew pretty soon that I was going to do it for a long-term career.
Did you do any of your own projects in film school?
Yes, definitely. And looking back on them, they were terrible. But at the time, we were very, very proud of what we were creating. We get a group of friends together, we'd write some terrible script and film it over the weekend and post it on YouTube. And we did a lot of extracurricular stuff, just filming little videos, mock-up music videos, stuff like that. So as much as I say, looking back on it, it wasn't that great. It was a great learning experience for us to just make something for fun and just see what happens. So yeah.
It's sort of like practice. It's something that we talked about earlier. Is there anything that you learned from doing your own projects that you still use or you can apply going forward?
Yeah, especially I think looking at my business now, as I run it by myself, but having to organize a full project from start to finish, especially when we're a group of students and we didn't really know what we were doing. We were mostly making it up as we go, but looking at all the different things you have to do within a film project with the producing it, finding locations to do it, organizing people to be in it, potentially getting the gear, doing the sound, doing the editing. So all that just as a whole, that really was a good preparation for doing everything as a whole now. And even in like later in my first jobs, just being a one-man band type situation in whatever role that might be, just knowing all those different roles and kind of going for it and making it up and then learning from things that went wrong when you didn't really know what you were doing. So when you get to doing a project with a client, you know what not to do and you know to check the microphones and you know to charge the batteries and things like that you've messed up doing your own projects on the weekend, but it doesn't really matter when you're in that environment. So definitely a learning curve to see what can go wrong and what to not do when you're in a real situation.
Well, best way to learn is from your mistakes, right? So because you don't make them again. So when you graduate from film school, what do you do on day one?
So I went straight into a job in local news and I was pretty lucky at the time. There was a big opening for local news positions and, just kept applying until I got something. And so my first job, only a few months out of university, was for I say regional news, but here in Queensland, the Sunshine Coast where I worked is not super regional. It's probably the best regional location you can get. But that was camera operating and editing for news. And I was thrown in the deep end there, definitely. You think you learn a lot when you go to university, but in a real situation, you're out there in the field with a camera that you're not too familiar with and, got to create a news story for the day. That was a great learning experience in itself, again, being thrown into it. And working with a team on a strict deadline every day to get a bulletin to air. That really teaches you how to be time efficient and how to deal with different situations when things are going wrong and having to pull it together to get the news to air. So yeah, that was the first job that I had. And then moved more into the corporate video space after that. When I left news, I found a production house still on the Sunshine Coast where I was living, who had a person resign the day before I contacted them, which was pretty lucky for me, and got exposed to a whole different world of video, I guess. Because news, there's a pretty standard format for that. You film some interviews, film some cutaway shots, and boom, you've got a news pack, and there's a pretty usual way to do that. But doing the corporate video and getting to be more creative, that was probably what led me more back to my love of the camera operation that I'd found at uni and wanting to be a director of photography. So yeah, going to that more creative field and getting to travel and work with lots of different people, that was a good role.
In the news environment, did you have to did you witness or have to coach anyone through that kind of getting through speaking to camera?
Yes, I'd say yes. Some people are total naturals at it, and some people, you put a camera in their face, like we're talking about earlier, and all goes to pieces. Normally, I would be with a journalist who would do most of the question asking, but on the weekends, we would go out by ourselves with the camera and the microphone and do all the weekend stories. So that was when I first had to learn out of necessity how to help someone be comfortable on camera. And I suppose the biggest thing I found from that, where if I seemed like I was relaxed and everything is all good, they felt relaxed and that everything was all good. But when I was nervous at the start of doing that job, just because I'm worried I'm going to forget to press record or something like that, that puts that person off and makes them nervous. So just really holding space for them to, it's okay if, you don't say it right the first time. We can always edit it, and just, being that kind of supportive person, making them feel relaxed is really probably where I first learned that without really realizing that I'd learned it yet. So, yeah, there was a lot of different personalities you come across as well that are either going to give you everything that you need first up or really struggled to answer the question, and just figuring out how to talk to different people so you could get what you needed out of them was that, big learning experience.
So if you're about to, well, I know that you don't do this anymore, but if you're about to film a news interview about something that's just happened, and you've got the camera and the person's like, for those that are listening to this, I just did big eyes. What do you say to them?
Yeah, they're normally completely psyched out by the camera, but you literally just say, it's all good. Just talk to me. Camera's not there. Just talk to me. And I will actually step away from the camera because they're not looking directly into the lens for the news, which is good. So I can take a half step away from the camera. I can see it recording, but I just get them to talk to me. And if they're really psyched out about what they're going to talk about, I'll ask them something totally unrelated, like what they had for breakfast, and just get them to talk normally again, and then go into the interview a bit more stealthily rather than just, okay, record your name. We've got that. First question is this. And you just talk to them, just like we're having a conversation now. Just start talking and then lead into the actual point of the conversation. And that normally helps people just relax and forget they're actually being interviewed, and they'll just talk.
So you're actually recording before you, when you're asking them about what they have for breakfast, you're actually already recording at that point.
Yeah. Sometimes if I could tell they were really nervous, I would press record and pretend to still fiddle with the camera and pretend to do a mic check by asking them some unrelated question, and then just start talking, and they go, oh, we're already going, but they've already answered most of the questions that I need them to. So it ends up being super easy.
And in regards to having a conversation with someone or not focusing so much on the camera, you could potentially do that even if you were on your own, right? So you could pretend you were having a conversation with, I don't know, a lampshade or something.
Yeah. And that's the hard part when you're sitting in a room by yourself with a camera. And it's definitely, obviously, easier to have a friend there for the first time you record yourself. But even if you think about someone that you would talk to that your video is directed at, and there's a technique that I use with some people where we picture their ideal client. So if they're making any kind of informational video or sales video, it's like, who is the person that you're talking to? And it's not the whole world of their thousands of potential clients. It's one person, and we identify who that is. Are they a mum? Are they, do they work in a shop? Are they trying to change their lives? Are they a fitness person? Like, what are their hobbies? And you figure out who that person is that you would talk to if you were standing in a shopping center pitching to someone, who that ideal person is going to be and how you would actually talk to them using their language. And it takes a bit of practice as well. To figure out who this person is and practice talking to them. But if you picture just talking to one person instead of the whole world, it takes away a bit of that idea of judgment that we talked about earlier, and also helps you just single in on just having a conversation, just like you would if someone was interviewing you.
So you're in your corporate job. At what point do you decide to go out on your own? go into business?
Yeah. So my corporate job, I was partly doing my own thing at the same time. So I came on board with this production house as the second camera operator, but it was only kind of a part-time job. So I probably worked for them 3 days a week, and I still do some work for them now. So I still had space there to do my own thing. And when I first started doing that, I was freelancing for a number of different companies. I just kept asking people to take me on until I got a yes from someone, learnt from lots of different people. And then I had at uni, even, I had a few clients that I'd done a little bit of stuff for. And so I had a little bit of experience doing that. And those same people wanted more videos when I was a bit more experienced. It's a few years later. So just having a little bit of that going on in the background of working for these different companies is how it kind of started. And that was more just to supplement my income at that point, just to have an extra job to do. But then probably about a year and a half, when I'd gotten more confidence in doing the shooting and doing more of the whole project, I just kind of naturally knew that I wanted to do more of my own projects with my own clients to have more creative control over the whole project itself. Because as a camera operator, I could have so much of it, but you're always working to a script that someone else has written, which is fine. But I wanted to work with the person from start to finish, design their project, do all the shooting, do all the editing, bring it together as a whole. So it's, you have total creative control with that client over that project. So it was a progressive thing, but yeah, it's probably just eventually when I felt confident enough, I decided to start to push more to find my own clients and do more of my own stuff.
So you already had some of your own clients when you went to work on in the business videos, but when do you get your first client, your own client?
My own client.
What does that look like?
Yeah, I would say I had my very first client in university, and I've been working with her for the last 6 years. So I guess I count her as my very first client. But other than that, the first thing I ever did was a wedding video for someone. And obviously, I've never filmed a wedding before. I just, I can do it. How much work could it be, really? So, charged $300 for this wedding video. Turned up, filmed the whole thing, put hours and hours and hours of work into it. I'd say that was probably my first real client when I was out on my own. That's probably where it all started. Started doing wedding videos just for probably, friends of friends type situation. And then later on, a few years later, moving more into the corporate video stuff.
So if someone approached you now and said, will you do a wedding video for us? What would you say?
It would depend who they are. I don't mind doing the occasional wedding video. It is fun. It is a lot of work, but it is fun. So I mostly only do them for friends of friends still, though. So not pushing it super hard, anyone listening to this podcast right now. But yes, the occasional wedding video is probably more of a hobby.
Yeah, it's more work than you might imagine, right?
Yeah, you go into it thinking it's not really going to be that much. And especially now that I've been doing it for a while, the workload is definitely less than what I put into the very first one. But yeah, and just the pressure, you got to capture all the key moments, make sure the battery's not going to go flat or something during the main I-dos. So yeah, it's a lot of work, a lot of pressure, but it's a good day. Everyone's always happy, having a good time. So normally ends up being a good, happy video.
So you've got you get your business up and running and it's all going well. What happens when COVID starts? Have you got stuff lined up, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So that point in time, I think it was around February, like just before COVID broke out. Had so many jobs lined up 2020 was looking fantastic. And then there was one day I remember that all my clients pulled out on the one day after the news came on in the morning, and it was kind of confirmed that it was a pretty big deal. So that wasn't a good day, I would say. But that's where, you know, you've got all this time on your hands. You have to do something. I started the podcast. I started doing YouTube videos. I started moving into more of the educational side of things. And there was a few months of just trying to figure out what was going to happen. Was it going to go back to normal? Can my business go back to the way it was? And that's when the informational videos for clients started to happen, because I was approached by one of my previous clients about doing some of that work. And then that, without really realizing at the time, that's where it started to shift, because clients that I had worked with before came to me to do the online course type stuff. So it slowly shifted into that across all of 2020. And even now, looking at things are kind of going back to normal here in Australia, but we had travel booked a few weeks ago and it got cancelled because we had another outbreak. So that kind of, we were traveling. I was traveling every second week of, to all different states to do filming. That's probably the main thing that's not going to return to, normal, if anytime soon. But yeah, so it was like a gradual change, I guess, but probably change that's going to be permanent.
How long before you started the podcast from that day where you got all the calls?
So I started my podcast last June. So it took me about 3 months. And the podcast had been something that was in the back of my mind for, years, since I started listening to podcasts myself. But I never really thought that would be something that I would pursue. At that time, I thought, what do I really have to talk about? But it was just an idea, actually, that I was having a casual conversation with my dad about something. And he goes, oh, well, why don't you start your own podcast about it? And it was just such a, well, why can't I start a podcast? There's nothing stopping me from doing it. I do have all this time on my hands now, but it still took a couple of months to figure out, well, what's the topic going to be? What do I really love talking about? All I really know was talking about video, but I didn't really want to do a podcast about that. And that's where the mindset science idea came into it, because everything that I do working with clients, it all really comes back to mindset around it. And that's something that I'm just, really, really interested in anyway. And so it slowly formed. It took me a number of weeks to get up the courage to actually ask my first guests if they would be on a podcast. And doing the first episode was terribly nerve-wracking, but that was another slow build. And then, now it's just such a natural, fun, systemized thing. I thought, damn, I really should have started this sooner.
So of the episodes that you've done earlier, your 3 other episodes, what are your favorite points about mindset that you would share on this one?
Oh, that's a good question.
Let's just take the best bits of your previous ones and apply them here. Not being selfish or anything.
Yeah. So the one that I just did before I jumped on with you, we were talking about gut health in relation to mindset. And the biggest takeaway from that is that our gut and our gut health is the core of our whole health and immunity, energy levels, everything. So the key takeaway from that, look after your gut and you've got a whole holistic well-being there. And previous to that, we were talking about, you've asked a tough question here. I have to think back on my day.
I like to do that. It doesn't have to be of today. So, feel free to share whatever mindset best practices that you would like to.
Yep. All right. So I can refer to some of my sticky notes. I've got a number of takeaways from my podcast that I leave up there. One of them, we talk a lot about habits and habit stacking. I'd say possibly in every episode, we've talked about the power of forming good habits. And there's a quote that I like to pull. I think it is originally from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And it says, "We do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems." And having good systems in place to be able to reach our goals, whether that's weight loss, financial goals, business goals. The goal is great. It's a great way to give us direction. But if you don't have a solid system in place that you act on every day, then the goal is it's just a wish. So, for example, weight loss, you can think about it and have a goal all you want. But if you keep skipping the gym and choosing the donuts, then we're going to fall to the level of the system there. So that's one of the biggest takeaways, I'd say, from my podcast as a whole, is looking at habits and building and stacking small positive habits that you can do every day.
So it's essentially not relying on willpower.
Willpower is a lie. There is only so much of it that you have in a day or in a week. And eventually you're going to use it up, or you'll have a particularly hard day and you'll stop and get those donuts. I reference donuts because they are my weak point, I suppose. But you got to have the system there to fall back on so that you don't rely solely on willpower, because eventually you're going to use it all up.
Rachel, what are your goals?
My goals. So, goal number 1, grow the podcast. I want to take it. It's currently a fortnightly podcast, but I'm going to take it weekly when we hit the 1-year mark in June, and just reach out to more guests. Just grow. I guess I don't really have a number in mind. I probably should, but exponential growth, just growing as big as we can. And also with the business, I want to add a lot more training and education in there when I work with clients, like building on all the video resources that I have. So when someone comes and does work with me, they can come away with not just having a video, but having more of a transformational experience and having confidence then to go out and do more videos themselves. Instead of having to get a videographer every single time, they can have more confidence to do social media videos and just be able to put themselves out there without being afraid to do that. So that is really the thing I want to give my clients, more than just a video, is give them an experience that can help them in the long run.
Okay. And you it made me think of something, which is your courses that you put out. Is that like another form of lead gen for you? So if someone is coming and they want to know more about creating video, that's essentially an opening conversation for you to have a corporate video, for example. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. So at the moment, I've got a lot of videos on YouTube. That's my first, it's kind of my training ground, I suppose, to get information out there. But I'm developing some courses at the moment. So still working on the exact structure of that, because I suppose the YouTube videos or whatever topic has come up from questions I've been asked at the time, and helping people, create better videos with their phone and stuff like that. But currently working on a course that will be more of a lead generation that people can look at and access, and even they work on before they work with me. If I'm doing one about camera confidence to start with. So it'll be in a digital and video form, and people can go through that and either use that themselves to do their own projects, or then come to me with some background knowledge and we go from there.
Okay. Thank you for all the information today and your story. Where's the best place for people to find you?
You can connect with me on Instagram or Facebook at That Camera Girl, or find me on LinkedIn, Rachel Tapscott, and I'll connect with you there.
Well done for your 4th podcast of the day. Very impressive.
Thank you very much. Yep, I'm going to shut the computer down now, I think. It's been a very good day, but a very long day. But it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me on.
And move some Post-it notes around, right?
Yes, I can. I can shift some, tick some off. I can put yours on that side now that we've completed it. So without
being on the computer.
Yep, exactly. Shut down technology.